by Slimani.
What a goal from George Bulldog!
Finished by Ollie McBurney.
What is happening, Blades? And welcome back to the Blades Ramble. So this is our piggyback edition, if you like, jumping on the back of somebody else's hard work. I'm all for that. You know, it's what we're about, I suppose. So, we're obviously here to discuss the Prince Abdullah interview that took place on the Sheffield United way. One that sort of caused a little bit of an online stir prior. And I'd like to think now, for those of us that have seen it, that we can sort of think it were a little bit of a storm in a teacup. There's lots to get into. I thought it were a very newsworthy episode. If you haven't seen it, please go over to Sheffield United Way and watch it. I'm sure we all will. It's one of them that you can't miss it, can you? When such a controversial figure, because let's be right, that's what every owner is going to be into. Some people are going to agree with almost everything. Some people are going to agree with almost nothing. And most of us are in between. It's really good to hear directly from him and things get talked about in terms of why you're speaking to us rather than the established journalists and things of that nature. So I thought it were really informative. And what better way to discuss this than speak to the main man himself? It's Ian Good Nick.
What's happening,
Hello,
Blades?
What's happening, Blades? He's got it down now. Got the lingo down. So, mate, thank you for joining us.
Boys.
I thought it would be an ideal time to get you in because for those of us that aren't in the online space, or I appreciate me and you are, we're very much on Twitter and, you know, clearly YouTube, but other platforms as well. There's been a little bit of a rhetoric prior to this interview in terms of, they won't be asking him the tough questions and he'll dance around the answers or it'll be pre-planned. And I think for anybody that's watched it can see, I don't think it were any of that personally. And listen, I'm good mates with you. I've spoken to Prince Abdullah recently that I've obviously been open and honest about that. But if it were light or fluffy in any way, I think you'd have still been able to answer me questions that I'm going to put to you in terms of it being fair game, if you know what I like. So, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I wanted to ask you to come on today, mate, just because I think the feedback will be overwhelmingly positive. And if it's not, the only thing I'm going to caveat this with is if you don't agree with how the interview was conducted or you're not happy with certain elements of the interview, that's absolutely fine. But please, we're open to challenge, but it's not let's abuse Nick because he's come on the Blades Ramble. let's all have a pop at him. It's a case of please be respectful because that's what we are. And if you're not, then you'll be slung out. So, Nick, how are you, mate? How has it gone? How did the interview come to be? Let us know all about it.
Well, believe it or not, Jimmy, it's been a pretty decent day. I wasn't expecting it to be a pretty decent day, in all honesty. As you've just alluded to, we have had a lot of stick over the past week. I think it was exactly a week ago today that we did the video about Illiman, confirming that Illiman was going. And we confirmed that we were going to be doing a video with Prince Abdullah. I think it's gone kind of as well as it possibly can have done. We came out of that thinking, I think just the fact that we've read so many things online about you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to conduct this interview in this way and this way. Yeah. And people putting all their thoughts across. I don't think there was any way we were going to come out of that and think we nailed that, because we've always got in the back of our mind, oh, these people don't think we're going to challenge him. Did we challenge him enough? Did we ask the right questions? And we couldn't really not ask the right questions, because what we did, I'll let you in on a little secret behind the curtain here. We literally had probably 500. Pardon?
There's only me and you. So nobody else will know this. Go on.
Right. In that case, I'll tell you everything.
Brilliant. Yeah, please do.
So we had 400 questions on Twitter alone. We had questions on our Illiman video as well that I asked them to put in there, which Hal really, really enjoyed me telling them to put it on there as well. So multiple platforms you've got to pick questions from. Some asked questions on S2 forum, some asked them on Facebook, all over the place. So we collated every single question, or I said that Hal did it. Muggins did it in the end took a long old time. I had to download. Right, I'll just tell you this. I had to download a Twitter exporter to export all the questions out, so I didn't have to copy and paste 500. So a lot has gone into this, Jimmy. A hell of a lot. And so we put them all into categories and then picked out kind of like we prioritized the most popular questions. That's how we did it. Because if we'd have asked 500 questions, I'm sure 50 of them would have been, why is this Joker still in our club? Get him out. And actually, were a lot worse words than that. So yeah, we asked him the questions that the fans wanted, so we couldn't get any stick about that. We probably would have asked him some different questions to try and get more out of him, because we've done a lot of these interviews, and if you start quite woolly and then lead up to better questions, you kind of get them engaged early. But we had to ask hard-hitting questions from the outset. And do you know what? The Prince, I think, did really, really well. But he didn't shirk anything. That he's always honest when it comes to something like that. He doesn't either understand. He'll ask, "Can you repeat that?" Or he'll say, "I don't know about that. I'll have to speak to Stephen about it." He could just make something up, but he's not that sort of bloke. He will always be honest. If he doesn't know something, he'll just say, "Sorry, I don't know about that." So I think overall, he handled it very well. I wasn't 100% sure how well we did at the time, because I had so many things going round in my head. It was literally the worst week, one of the worst weeks of my life. That just the amount of abuse that we got was just, I've never seen anything like it. And like, I understand how actual celebrities must feel now, getting so much hate. And don't get me wrong, today we've received a lot of nice messages from people. I have anyway, and I'm sure Hal will have done. So I just want to shout out all the Blades fans for doing that. All the people in my DMs saying really nice things. I've not had any horrible messages or anything like that, but I've still got a lot to go through, because, as I said, I did turn my phone off for a couple of hours, went to Meadow Hall, which is not exactly the least stressful place in the world. So turned it off for a couple of hours, came back, had a hell of a lot of notifications, but I think 95% of them were really, really nice.
Good. I'm pleased, mate. And you've covered a lot there, so I appreciate it. We've talked about, we're going to try and keep it light today, but I'd like to get your thoughts on the main talking points that he brought up as well. But we're not going to dwell on the sort of negativity, because, as I say, I think you've come out of it with a lot of credit.
We've done it as well, Jimmy. We've spoken about it enough. We don't need to keep talking about it, do we? Let's brush it under the carpet. It's gone.
I agree. And I think it shouldn't come to this, but I think he's answered a lot of the questions that people were sort of stating that you were going to be like, and you're not going to ask him hard-hitting questions and stuff like that. And whether they've got an issue with the answer or not, then at least you've asked the question, haven't you? So I thought there was some really good stuff to come out of it, though. I've got my list ready, so I'm going to have a chat to you about a few of the things that he talked about. So the first one, straight out of the box, I thought were great, because it's something that's some of the detractors, if you like, have been throwing at you and me and Darren and everything. Why do you talk to YouTube channels and people on Twitter rather than the established media, whether that be local or national? Well, he gave you 3 reasons for that. He thought it had some unfair treatment in the past from the local media during the court case, which is his perception. Obviously, it's and he's entitled to his own opinion on that. Whether that was true or not, I'm not in a position to say. He likes doing live interviews, so it can't be misinterpreted in terms of the written quote and things of that nature. If people see him speaking,
I think he was kind of misquoted on that. Me and Hal had a chat about this afterwards. So when he said live, I think when everybody says live, this is live, isn't it? This is a live broadcast.
Yeah.
When he's mentioned live, I think he just means on a video, unedited, in person, so you can get. I think you probably got that from what he said, but I just wanted to confirm, because a lot of people said, "Why don't you do it live?" He likes doing live videos, and it's like, I don't think he actually meant that, because the amount of stupid questions and really disrespectful questions that we were given to pose to him. Imagine if they were in the live stream and we'd gone, let's just talk to Steve Davis about this, Plonk, not the snooker player, by the way, and then just put it on the screen. And
You are
Like,
an effing so and so. Get out of our club.
fraud, whatever kids say these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And the third reason he gave was that he thinks that this sort of platform and speaking via social media is the future, and that's where things are going. I'd like to also put in there that, because I had it later down, but it's I think it's appropriate to say now that you and Hal particularly led on it, but there's surely a place for local media and things of that nature. Will you speak to Radio Sheffield, for example? Because he talked about national interviews that he'd been on Sky and TalkSport, but Hal were like, well, is it something you'll reconsider now, going back on local radio? And he said, yeah, I will do if I'm not going to do them back to back to back, but I will if there's a bit of time between, so there's a little bit of a different update to give, then I'll do that. So I thought that were really interesting, because obviously time will tell with these things. Rob Statton's been on saying that they've been trying for a long time, and there's more than one side to this. But as I say, we wouldn't even have the Prince's perspective if you hadn't done this interview. So yeah, really appreciated that, mate. I'm going to start jumping into people's comments very shortly, but just to touch on another couple of points. The takeover, you asked him directly about that, something that everybody has wanted to know about. 2 to 3 serious offers are on the table currently. He wants to stay on if possible, which I think is what a lot of people will take from his answer, because we've heard at different times that, yes, we're progressing with 1, 2 or 3 parties, but then when you don't hear and you just hear that same rhetoric come out, but the sort of juicy bit, if you like, was, yeah, I want to stay on if I get chance. I think he didn't rule out a full sale of the club, but he did say that if I can have a role going forward, maybe retain 20-25%, then I'd definitely be interested in that. And I think I've seen some people jump on that as well and sort of say, well, this is clearly why it's stalling a takeover. And I think Darren's come back, and I think other people see it as, well, it's now more an attractive offer, to be honest, because someone else will get a controlling stake for less of a price. And we've actually had more offers since that was put to potential investors than a straight sale. This is the price and you have to meet it to take it off my hands. So, and that'd involve United World staying with us. I know that's another controversial arm of his tenure.
People won't like that, will they?
They won't. But in terms of the scouting network and things of that nature, which is a huge asset to all clubs involved in it, if you like, we're benefiting from Scandinavian scouts and things. We ain't got Paul Mitchell jumping over every couple of weeks to go to Sweden and things of that nature. It's all because we've got people placed around these countries now. So really good, mate. Really good. I thought really interesting stuff, and I'm happy to get into people's comments to discuss. Just on takeover before we move into some comments. You asked him directly. Again, I don't see how these questions can be criticised, and they've come from the fans. You were very keen to emphasise that. It's not, and that weren't a get out. It weren't like, these aren't our questions, Prince. It was, this is what the fans want to know, and this is what's been put to us.
We had to do that. We physically had to do that because of the stick that we were getting it.
But go on. No, I just think it's legitimate, isn't it? It's just, it shows credibility that you're not going to ask him soft questions. You said,
can I just say that the last time there's been some silly accusations about us. I'm not saying terrible accusations like, I'm going to say something stupid and I better not. There's like, for instance, people saying that none of us go to any football matches. Like I go to every Sheffield United home game, at least I have a season ticket. That's silly. Do a lot of silly things about us, obviously not asking him whatever questions. We asked people for the exact questions that they wanted us to ask. If they think that we didn't jump in enough and ask him further follow-up questions and stuff, why didn't you ask us? Why didn't you ask every possible thing that you want us to ask? And we would have gone through it and looked bit by bit, which we did. Yeah. We spent a lot of time. People think that you start a YouTube channel, you turn on a camera and a microphone, and you just talk. There's a lot of planning that goes into these things. You will have planned a load of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's terrible handwriting.
I never used to write notes. I feel like I have to now. Unbelievable.
Well, you do, don't you? Because people hold you to absolutely everything that you say. I used to do that. I used to jump on a video and just chat. And you just can't do things like that these days, and especially with something as important as what we did. And we went through all the questions together. We made sure we put in there about the local news stations as well, and the Star and things like that, because we want to bring them back together. We don't have to say that. We didn't have to do what we did, but we made a conscious decision to make sure we put to him about that, so that people didn't think that we were out for ourselves, which we're not. We're doing it for the fans. We're not doing it for ourselves. Like me and Hal, we've been put into this position for some reason, and we have to hold him accountable to all these questions. We're just Sheffield United fans. We enjoy watching the team on the pitch, and like we've got to be like a business manager. We've got to be an accountant. We've got to be all sorts these days. And obviously, we try and get as many great people on the channel to talk about all the things that we're not quite that versed in. And listening to some of the things that the Prince were coming out with, I was like, I'm gonna have to Google some of these words afterwards. And it's like, I don't think I'm as equipped as some other people, but we did our best. That's another assumption. They were saying that real journalists need to be doing this. Hal is a real journalist. He has a degree. Like, what? Like, fair enough on me.
He's literally a professional, though. That's his day job, isn't it? He's a presenter.
He's a presenter. And someone said something about me, and what was it now? That was it. Sorry, it wasn't anything to do with the interview, but it was about the sponsor on the front. I said it looked rubbish, and someone says, "Oh, you're a graphic designer now, are you?" I'm like, well, yeah, that's part of my job. Like, people make assumptions about you before they even have a clue about you. So no, it's been a funny old week.
Oh, mate.
Go on, sorry.
But that, so you've questioned him straight away. Why do you just talk to us? What's happening with Takeover? The next one you said is, are you pricing it too high? Which, I think is a very sort of intrusive question. He said, look, I've put 70 million in today. We're in League One when I purchased us, or I sort of went in to buy us.
The actual question, Jimmy, the original question was, seeing as though you've bought us for practically nothing, which I knew for a fact that wasn't true. But I asked that question because someone physically wrote that, and I'm like, do you know what? People need to know that he's not the Poundland Prince or whatever you call him. He's put a lot of money into this club, whether people know it or not, whether people need to know it or not, because a lot of it really annoys me reading some of people's questions, because I'm thinking, do fans need to know every little bit about a football club? That didn't happen in the past. Now social media is involved. Fans seem to think that they need to know every single in and out, and actually, I don't know about business and stuff like that. So I'd rather the professionals deal with the business. And fair enough, if there are fans that are professionals and have got real kind of concerns and stuff, that's fine. But everybody seems to have an opinion, and everyone seems to think that their opinion's more important than anybody else's.
It made me laugh, mate. And I just, because a lot of the information, I mean, I'm only new to this sort of inner circle stuff, and I don't like to talk about it because I feel we always try to be inclusive, and we'll share whatever we can with everybody. And I joked last time on a stream that you'd said, I hate being in the know. So don't, fair play to you, Jimmy, if you enjoy it. But for someone who's been in the know for a little while, you just hate it because you don't know what you can and can't say. Well, everything you asked him and everything he answered was, I mean, there were some bits I didn't know, but it's all exactly, almost word for word, what he'd spoken to us about previously. So that's how I knew that it was genuine, what he was saying to you, because that was behind closed doors information. And then it's not for us to give that information directly. It's for the Prince if he wants to share it. And he did, thankfully, with you. So things like offering Illiman a relegation release clause of 20 million if we're relegated to Championship, plus 10% of the sell-on. And 30 million.
Who says that? Who says that?
If we stay in Prem, it's ridiculous. Those are.
You can't be more honest than that, can you?
No, he can't. And he'd shared that with me, and I'm sure you knew about it as well previously. We can come out and say he's been offered a brilliant deal, and that doesn't obviously talk about his wages, and we wouldn't go into that level of detail. And it's for the Prince to share if he wants to. But who gets that level of detail from their own chairman or owner? Sorry. So it's madness, mate. He said Blades Ramble were his favourite YouTube. Did that make the final edit?
That's got to be wrong. That's got to be wrong because it's Miss Rachel, his favourite YouTube channel. I don't know if you've ever seen Miss Rachel. It's
well, I don't know.
It's for babies. No, it's for babies. My son absolutely loves her.
We'll jump into comments, mate. There's loads more to get into, but fair fit. I'm just going see. I'll try and sanitize these as I go through, but I'm just jumping into the first one. So whether it's nice or not, would have been nice to hear about how they plan on rebuilding our attack. Currently, there's no creativity in the squad that is way off it. How are we going to sign some creativity? Well, I think he touched on.
He can't go through all the players that we're wanting to sign. I think he clearly stated that we're not going to necessarily be signing an Illiman replacement or two Illiman replacements straight away. In my opinion, I don't know whether this is what he's going to do. This is just from my opinion of supporting the Blades and seeing what's happened over the last couple of years. I think we're going to wait until really late on and sign a couple of attacking loan players, because that's where you get your best value. Because people saying loan Doyle and loan McAtee, loan Doyle, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because I think you've got to loan the players that would be the most expensive, if you get me. So Doyle, absolutely, you could probably get for, I don't know, might be able to get for 10 million or something like that. If you're going to try and sign a McAtee or a Cole Palmer, then they're probably going to go for double that, because they are further up the pitch, if you like, if we're going to be as basic as that. So he's looking at trying to bring in, like, make it a lot more solid. I'm saying him, Heke, he's obviously giving Heke the tools. Whether it's going to be they're going to be the right choices, whether we're going to have a strong enough side come Palace, I can't say that, because I watched the game. Obviously, I went to the game against Stuttgart and we were hopeless. We were really poor, and I'm hoping that we're going to have some players back before the Palace game, because I'm worried for the start of the season. I'm not worried for the rest of the season, because I think before the transfer window shuts, I think that we will bring in good enough players like we did. We signed Illiman, we signed Morgan Gibbs-White a couple of seasons ago, just before we signed, I know it didn't go well, but we signed Olsen, we signed Hourahan, all right towards the end of the window. And I remember going to Luton away during 0-0 and thinking, we are hopeless. I hope that's not the case when it comes to the Palace game, but I think that we will get a lot more players after the Palace game. I'm just worried for the initial start of the season.
No, I agree, mate. I think that's fair. I think it's coming around way too quickly for us, and Illiman stalling and changing his mind has definitely hindered our progress in transfer market. I think it makes me laugh with this fan base, and I'm part of this fan base, and I'm up and down just as much as everybody else. So I'm not pointing fingers and saying I'm not like this, because I am. But it makes me laugh because we were so gutted when Illiman left. Well, it looked like he were going to sign, so we're all elated. Then we're also down when he leaves. Then we hear rumours of who might be coming in, and we're elated again. And we're thinking, brilliant. If we get this player and this player, it actually looks like really good business to get some money for Illiman now and all this sort of thing. And then we lose 3-0 to Stuttgart, and it's like, oh my God, we're crap. We need someone in now. And now, hopefully, I mean, it could go one or two ways, really, but with the Prince coming out and being open and honest, or what we certainly deem to be honest, some may disagree, and certainly open with the fan base, hopefully some, like David here, feels like they're happy with how the club's being run, and we're confident in how things are moving forward. So he's doing his best for the club in a tough climate. Stuart says we have to trust Heke to use the cash wisely for his main target. I think we have the strikers, but no creativity. I'd even question whether we've got the strikers. I'd like to see another striker in, to be honest.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. We can't be starting first few games of the season with Asula and Benny Traore. I'm sorry, but we just can't. And it doesn't look like Ollie Max can be back.
Yeah. Kipper, one of our members, thank you, pal. Heard the Prince say staying on when the takeover happens. My concern is the new owners might want a clean slate without the Prince. Hope this will not hamper the takeover. I think we touched on this briefly already, and I appreciate your comment will come before that, Kipper, but I don't think it's a deal breaker that the Prince stays. I think if somebody wants to come in and completely buy him out, then he'd consider that. That's what I took from the interview, but
me too.
It should be more appealing to someone coming in who can help with the transition and let you know how things are running currently. The Prince would be a minority stakeholder, so he wouldn't have control over where the finances go and things of that nature. He'd have a say, but he wouldn't have control.
I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing because he's got the experience. He clearly cares about the club. He's clearly trying to do the right things for the club. So he could help that transition and maybe only stays a year, maybe he stays 2, but maybe kind of keeping himself, he's dangling his toes in the water, might actually keep us kind of on the right track, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know. I don't know, but he clearly cares about the club to want to keep 20 to 25% stake in the club, doesn't he? It's not like he's selling to the first bidder and running off.
That's right. Similar note, Mark says he still wants to be involved, but he can't afford it on his own. I think he's been open and honest about that he can't really progress us individually, but he's talked about investors in the past. He's talked about a full sale. And here we go, Nick. This is what we're after, mate. Enjoyed the interview by Nick and Hal. Good range of questions, which the Prince answered with as much detail as he could and gave background to the answers. Well done to all. Thank you, Lee. I think that's fair comment. There'll be others that don't agree, and this isn't just a pandering session, but it ain't let's throw mud at the Sheffield United way. We want your honest opinions, and I'm sure Nick will try and answer as long as they're respectful. Hey, good interview with the Prince on Sheffield United way. Let's get some in and see how we go. Absolutely, pal. See, Craig, who's one of our members, thinks he skirted a lot of questions, but
what specifically, Craig? I'd like to know that. Just not being disrespectful, but just like to know it so that we can chat about it.
Absolutely, yeah. And to be fair, even if that is your opinion, at least the question was asked, weren't it? So, and it's not a case of protecting anybody, but a lot of the rhetoric beforehand was you're not going to ask him difficult questions, and I don't think that can be put to you, mate. Why does he still want to be involved with the club? We've talked about that, Stephen, mate. Greedy Illiman, says Craig. I don't think it were money oriented, and I think we've heard this ourselves, haven't we, Nick? He said if there were any other club really, and that's what you talked about all three of you together. If it were anybody else, we'd have likely kept him. He may have even signed that new deal, but it wasn't about money, William, and it never has been. It were the one club we didn't want to come in. He came across great, says Sean. Stephen says, get Sousa signed, please. That's another name that's been talked about. It would be a good signing from what I've seen. Scott says he's in the UK, apparently.
But where in the UK?
Yeah, I know. If he's in Burnley, then we're struggling.
Yeah.
There's rumours flying about all over the place, and there will be for the next 3.5 weeks. So I'm trying not to get too far down rabbit holes with where this player is, what they're doing, who they've spoken to. Because Alan Nixon...
You're not tracking flights or anything, Jimmy?
Well, not yet. I ain't got to that stage, but he's got our fan base on strings sometimes as Alan Nixon. And I just think you read some stuff and they're bang on, and you read others and you think, well, it's not being funny, but I know that's not right. So anyway, that's by the by. Evening, ain't happy as a blade, pal. Can't believe Prince still having a say when club is sold. When he's sold, he should sell all the club. Can't see the club going forward with him still involved. Pity he's not gone. Entitled to that opinion, Danny. No issue with you having your own say on it, mate.
And that could be right. It might be better without him. Like, we just don't know, and we'll never know. We'll have to wait and see what happens when eventually it does happen, because you never know. Him staying might be a good thing, and it might not. It might hold us back. So it's a valid concern.
Yeah, agreed. Why can't he reveal Illiman's fee? Well, I think this leans nicely into something else he spoke to you about, Nick. You were talking about, can you kibosh basically, or put us right on this £20 million budget that we're alleged to have had and things of that nature? And I think maybe you could argue that he skirted this question, but I thought his answer fit exactly what his intentions were. What he was saying was, look, if I talk to you about exactly how much I've got, and then people add up what we've spent, they know what we've got left. Yeah. So if you reveal Illiman's fee, you add that to a pot, then the more people are like, for example, Declan Rice went to Arsenal for 105 million. West Ham cannot buy anybody at value at the minute because everybody knows they've got wads and wads of cash and they're desperate to replace him. So if Prince came out and said, yeah, we only got 10 million for Illiman, then, which we obviously didn't, but we'd be able to be in for players and they wouldn't be trying to pull his pants down. If he said, actually, we got 25 million for him, so we're absolutely laughing and it were a great deal for the club. Well, Tillman, who's this rumoured replacement that we might be in for, his price tag might shoot up from, say, 12 to 16, 17, 18. And that's what the Prince was saying. It's you always want teams to think you're skint because it's good business. So,
well, like you said with the Declan Rice thing, it's also the Gareth Bale situation as well when he left Spurs, because they bought tons of players all well over what they were actually worth. They were all rubbish in the end. So I completely get where he's coming from with that. And I think
I do.
I think most owners and chairmen will do that.
Well done, Sheffield United away. Many thanks from Sean. And Jez says, liked the interview as well. Doesn't help us as a club, says Scott, telling him how much money we've got. Just answering to Chris there. Genuinely thought they asked some good, honest questions. Not all of way either. Okay. Haven't seen the interview yet, says Bob, but are we getting any closer to having new owners? Yes, we are, but he understandably didn't give any timescales or anything like that. He says he's been stung in the past by trying to give timescales. You also pushed him a little bit on. I think the question was around how can you safeguard the club against essentially dodgy owners, because we've had two very questionable people at the forefront. I'd say one very questionable and one very upstanding gentleman, but you know,
I'd agree.
My experience.
I'd agree.
So there you go.
And that Moretti that bought me as well. I completely agree.
You're only one on Moretti. I were going the extra licking mile by having Guinness. So yeah, you said to him basically, how can you help safeguard the club going forward, and how much due diligence do you do on these? And he basically said, we do our initial due diligence, but really we haven't got the resources to keep ploughing into these potential owners without any necessary comeback. So we've got to weigh it up, because the EFL also do it, and then obviously now the Premier League do it as well, and the governing bodies. So we have to trust them to do the right checks as well to a degree, which I thought was fair. He said also that, yes, Maurice, they got their fingers almost burned with that. So when Dozy came in, they asked for a deposit, a large deposit, to show his intent, which they thought would further safeguard him against any potential deal that didn't go through. And that linked nicely into reasoning, whether we agree with it or not, but reasoning as to why the club's experienced financial difficulty lately. So we all know we chose as a club to retain a lot of our playing squad in order to give us the best possible chance to go up. When that didn't happen under Slav, and then obviously Eki made a late push and we didn't quite get over that line. The second season was ruining us financially. Dozy was due to pay 11 million. The Prince says he only paid 9, and that too had been accounted for in terms of seeing us through. So that's what got us into the financial difficulties. Unless you can sort of fill in any gaps for me there, Nick. That's where I picked up from there, and that led to the embargo.
Hang on. Yeah.
So yeah, I found that really interesting. And he wasn't particularly saying they weren't at fault at all as a board. He'd sort of basically just said, look, I were relying on that money coming in, and if I'd have had more time, I could have got more money in. But because that were due, you expect it to come, and it never did. And that's why we're in a bit of trouble. So yeah, interesting. He talked about Slav. And a really interesting point he said, I thought, was they wanted to appoint Eki straight after Wilder left. But
he said that all along to us. He's always said that. He's always said that Eki was always going to be the one.
And he were exactly right with the fans wouldn't have accepted it. The fans would not have us. And I can hold my hand up and say I would have certainly been in that bracket. Because even when we all wanted Slav, or the vast majority wanted Slav, it was a big name. His style didn't fit the club at all. But I think we all saw past that and thought, well, he's a great manager who's got 2 promotions with 2 different clubs. Get him in and let's see if we can bounce back. Well, it were awful because styles didn't mesh. It don't make him a bad manager. Don't make our players bad players. We obviously went on to do good things. But it just didn't work for whatever reason. And I think Eki needed that. Eki needed Slav to come in and fail for him to then be given a chance. And even then, I was also of the, this is a cheap option. I'm not happy with this. They're just sort of cutting corners by appointing Eki. And it's taken me a while to come round. Well, he's won us all round now, hasn't he, I think. But yeah, I found it really interesting that. Just on Wilder, I know I'm jumping around a bit here to beginning and end, and middle will probably come last. But he talked about Chris Wilder and how he left and things of that nature. He were quite keen to say that he thanked him for everything he did for the club. We wouldn't be in this position without Chris Wilder. an interesting anecdote. He said that when Nigel Adkins were first appointed, and we all sort of look back and shudder at that Nigel Adkins era, him and I think he said Scott McCabe were the only two that wanted Wilder to come because Wilder were being considered. He'd actually approached the club and said, I'd like to be a manager, a year before we actually appointed him. But the board, they were outvoted by the board, and Nigel Adkins got the gig because his CV were better at the time. He said, but then obviously, so it could have been a lot sooner that we went on this journey, if you like. But then he also said that he's a better manager for the last 2 years, which obviously Wilder's not had the easiest of times with things over the last 2 years. But he says he's a better manager now because it can't all be success, and it's how you bounce back from your failures. And I thought that were really interesting because gives me hope that there may well be a reunion now that we know that they're all best friends again. So, because he said I'll still ring him up now and ask him about something if I'm not sure about it, or what, try and get his opinion from things. And we know that's not jumping over Hecky, because we know Hecky said previously as well, I'll talk to Chris as well, and I'll speak to him for advice and things like that. So it's nice to know that the fences are mended a little bit, because it was quite a nasty sort of split, weren't it, at the time? And
what I will say about that is just the fact that he said about how that he thanked Chris for all his work, and I'm assuming that it was really nasty at the time, so because there was not much of a send off for Chris, were there? And it would have been nice to have given him a bit more of a send off, because he has been, in my lifetime, the best Sheffield United manager up to now, just of purely what he's done. So it would have been nicer to have a bit of a better send off. I think if it wouldn't have been as nasty, he probably would have got that at the time. But I think it was all a little bit raw with everyone, because there were a lot of mistakes made in that, I think.
Yeah, there were. And you said that to him. I think Hal put it to him that, would it be fair to say that you both could have budged a little bit? And it, being the stubborn guy he is, didn't really budge that much, did he? I think he sort of changed the subject quite quickly. But I think, reading between the lines, I think both parties could have handled it slightly differently. But I could understand both points of view, I suppose, to a degree. So Paul jumping in here saying, quality interview, and I feel it silenced a few people and cleared a few bits up for everyone. Thank you, Paul. Stephen says, interview were great, Nick. Did yourself proud, mate.
That's really
Dublin
nice.
Blade. Well done, Nick and Cypress Hal, for bringing the interview to us Blades. Jimmy must be getting no Sunday dinner with recording in the kitchen as always. Up the Blades, both channels.
Your missus must be annoyed, to say the least.
Yeah, I think you know she's annoyed, mate, because I told you earlier. But never mind. We've had a Sunday dinner early. If you say anything, that's a deterrent, does Frank. We've talked about that, mate. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. You didn't ask any of my questions, thank God, says Coatsy.
Fair play.
I'm sure they did, but in a different guise, Coatsy, to be fair, because I know Nick said anything similar they've had to streamline. Great interview, hopefully new owners and a brand new cop with no pillars plus standing at. Yeah, he talked about no pillars in the cop and safe standing as well. It's honestly, for those of you, I'm sure, assuming all of you have, but for those of you that aren't, you need to see this interview. Do we know who the Prince was saying the big signing is? Is it Akpom? Moving on.
Yeah, we don't know anything
Harry,
about that.
To be fair, Harry, Akpom has been mentioned in and amongst other names. I talked about it quite openly the other night in terms of we were looking to sign Akpom if it was right for all parties. But that might depend on Jebo and other sort of cards falling in the right direction and things of that nature. So, but I don't know who the Prince were leaning on specifically. Yesterday was embarrassing. Too slow, no tackles, no effort. Only positive was Benny and Sander. Hope Hecky keeps backing, gets the backing he obviously needs. We'll always be there cheering them on. That's right, David Vinter, our English friend.
David Vinter.
David Vinter. I think in terms of Ecky's backing, Ecky knows the budget. He'll be just as gutted, probably more so than most, that Illy's gone. But from what I understand, and it may be different, and this may be a sell to us, but I think everybody is on the same page behind the scenes at United at the minute. They're all working really hard on targets. We've just got to readjust now that Illy's gone, because it changes our plan, but full focus will be on getting the players in that we need. In terms of backing, I think he's got that. I think he's got, the Prince even said in Nick's interview, if there is a special player out there that Ecky wants, then we will break it. In fact, he talked about that he's getting concerned about the age of the squad, which I think is interesting and something that I have voiced myself in the past, that we need to get younger as a squad. So he wanted the sort of outline to Hecky this close season was, let's invest in younger players, not with good potential. It doesn't mean they have to be, very raw now. We can still spend a bit of money to get a good player in, but make sure his ceiling's higher than, what we're buying him for now. And maybe spend 4 to 5 million on each of these players and get the age down. Because he were open about that, rather than 1 or 2 20 million pound purchases. Because it linked into the contract talk and things of that nature. But he said you can get a loan at any cost, any age, any cost, if you think it's what we need, Eke. He even said at one point, if it's an $100,000 a week player and we need him, and you can justify why we need him, then we'll get him in, because it's
Jesse Lingard in.
I know. Jesse Lingard will be mentioned. Dean Henderson will be mentioned. I'm just waiting for it all to pour in now. Well, he said we can have him, and he's obviously blocking Eke now in terms of letting him get what he wants. But he did say if there is a special player that Eke wants, and he did allude to there being somebody on the radar, which is probably what the earlier question were about, then they will break that transfer plan just to get the special player over the line. And it's, from what we understand, there's certainly discussions ongoing as to whether we can get a couple of key targets in, if you like. We all know the positions we want to strengthen. A couple of secondary positions like goalkeeper have been mentioned, which I would also argue, but it'll depend who we get. If we get a couple of free transfers and we're satisfied that fills the gaps that we need, then it might be more in pot to get a goalkeeper. But it's about
got to prioritise, haven't you?
Yeah, it's about the right players coming up into it. So just on the contracts, I'd want to put it out there, and I'll let you go, Nick, when we get on a little bit longer, because I tend to rattle on forever. But the contracts I found really interesting, because I'm not in the same boat as everybody else in terms of we need to sign everybody up now. And the Prince said it's by design, not necessarily that we let people's contracts run down, but we consider everybody's contract on like a case-by-case basis, is what he was saying. You have to look at the player, look at the value. What is he giving us? What can we offer him? Some might be, if we stay in the Premier League, they might not be good enough to stay in the Premier League. I personally would say things like Ben Osborne, for example. Are we going to renew him a further year at the end of this season? Because he's one of these that are out of contract again. I know he's just signed that extra year, but he's out of contract at the end of next season. Do we have to sign him up now so people feel more secure about him? I think the players they're talking about... I think players people are talking about, Egan, Baldock, McBurney, these players are on big money. Baldock and Egan will be 31 come end of season, I think. So going back down to Championship on big money, remember, I know they'll get a decrease, but still big money for a Championship player. I think these have got to be weighed up. Now, I'm not saying they need to go at all. I will give both of them a 3-year contract right now. But these are the considerations we have to make as a club, because if we can get Sai Sachdev coming through at right wing back, who will do maybe not the absolute peak of what George will do at 31, but when Sai Sachdev's 2021, there's a lot more upside to him in terms of, what he's going to bring us in the future compared to what George can bring us in the future. So he talked about that as well. The academy lads have got to be considered when we're talking about renewing contracts and things of that nature. Illiman came through academy. I know we bought him late. He wasn't like with us from 14. We got him from Boreham Wood, but he came through that system. And if we'd have, we brought Morgan Gibbs-White in, and I think Illiman benefited from being with Gibbs-White. But you could also argue that Gibbs-White kept Illiman out of the team that season a lot as well. I know they played together a fair bit, but similar positions, you could argue that it stunted his development in some regard. Obviously, it's a unique one, that, because I think Gibbs-White brought him on. But these are the sort of things we're talking about. If you buy a player and bring him in, like, for example, Ozzy now, I think he's blocking Andre Brooks or somebody of a similar ilk, Harrison Neal. I'd rather see Harrison Neal in there personally. But again, this is just considerations when they're talking about contracts.
It's the fact that we've gone up into the Premier League as well, though, isn't it? Because players like Harrison Neal might have been in and around the team, but going up into the Premier League, it's just not going to be good enough for a Premier League team. We need to bring like half of the first team players may not be good enough for the Premier League. It's going to be a very, very tough division. And having like some of these really, really good young players coming through, by us getting promoted, that might have stunted their development within Sheffield United and getting into the
Yeah,
team.
that's
If we'd
right.
have stayed in the Championship, then they may have got more of a run in. But like these loans are going to help them out and stuff like that. But I honestly think that we've not got a big enough squad to let some of these go out on loan because we may need them to fill in at some point.
Well, 9 subs now, isn't there? You know, and so you've got to have 20 players every match day. You get a couple of injuries and suspensions, you're soon going to use your 25-man squad. Paul, top man. Thank you, pal. Really appreciate it. Scotty showing the love as well. Did Prince say he still speaks to Wilder? Yes, absolutely he did. That's what we've just been talking about. Prince in. Absolutely. Prince in. Prince offered Wilder stakes. Yeah, I heard that rumour at the same time as well. I don't think that'll quite been on Nick's list to ask him this time, but he's spoken about it before, I believe. He spoke about it on your first interview, didn't he?
He did. He said that. He said that what was it now? If he kept the blades, I haven't got this to hand, but I think it was if he kept the blades up for a certain amount of years, then he would give him stakes in United World. And I don't know what the figure was, but it was worth. He told us it was worth this amount of money, and it's like, why would he want to do that if he was planning on sacking him or if he wasn't happy with him or whatever? So
yeah, agreed.
He clearly liked Chris and wanted it to work.
I think it's wildly known. Wildly known? That's Wilder, isn't it? Widely known that Chris wanted to leave. I think for me, the assumption I come to now is that he'd burned himself out, and without the fans there to keep him motivated and sort of make him see light at the end of the tunnel, because we're getting tonked every week at that stage. It were like it weren't really real to a degree when COVID were happening. It weren't proper football, were it? None of us enjoyed that period. Reading a chat between Nick and someone on Twitter last night, and the abuse Nick gets is an absolute joke. Nick gets is an absolute joke. Yeah, it is. We've talked about it, and we're not going to dwell on it because thankfully, most of the feedback's been positive from the interview, and rightly so. But yeah, it's a joke at times, and hopefully things will start to turn as we shine more of a light on it. Certainly is, Nick and Jim, easier said than done. Sorry, mate. I don't know which bit. Luke, top man. Thank you. Really appreciated. Welcome to the Ramblers, says Scott. Much appreciated, pal. The Prince retaining any percentage should offer an extra degree of confidence to any potential buyer, as he wants to stick around and not disappear over the horizon. Absolutely right. Oh. Absolutely right. You've got to draw a line under the trolls and stop talking about them. Well, I think we are doing now, Paul, mate. We'll just get more hate when they see it's causing so much stress.
Can I just say one thing? Easier said than done. If you actually got all the stick, you would realize how much it kind of consumes you. It's difficult. I was sat in a restaurant last night checking my phone. Like, I know that's ridiculous to say, but like it consumes you. You listen to it and you take it in and it hurts you and you just want to reply. Mostly I don't. But like until you get it, you don't know. You can't say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate. I'm not on the same level, and you know, it's one of the we talked about it before, and as I say, we're not going to dwell on it.
It's coming, Jimmy.
Well, yeah. But it's one of them that just because you're high profile in our little niche corner doesn't mean you're fair game for abuse. And I think the vast majority of people completely agree with that, which is why we're not going to dwell on it. But
yeah, let's move on. It's
not right and it's not acceptable. So. Yeah, I'll still come on and call it out from time to time because, and I'm happy to name and shame. It don't bother me, you know. It's not acceptable in any way. So yeah, but we'll move past it. As I say, I think we've said enough on it, to be honest. Imagine if McCabe was still around, Illiman would be at Everton right now. Absolutely right, and that's my opinion, Jez, as well.
I think Illiman might not even be at Sheffield United. He may have left because the Prince. He even said on the interview, didn't he, that he broke the mold with Illiman, offered him more money than he should have done to stay because Illiman, there was contract problems with him. The Prince said, "Give him what he wants." Slav put him in the team, and then the rest is history. So we may not have even got to that point if McCabe was still in charge.
No, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It's daft, isn't it? It's daft how things go. And he did say, which I thought were a really good point as well, because we've more or less covered everything now, I think. But he said, look, I could have sold Illiman, or I could have kept Illiman, sorry, no problem, and let him walk out for nothing. Because if I'm going to be a minority holder or even out of the club altogether, then I sort of ride off into the distance and I'm a hero because I've kept Illiman and die. Well, it's better for the club, though, in order to get money in and get the money for a potential replacement, that we sell him. So now I'm taking a load of stick because he's gone. But, it's for the betterment of the club.
He's so right. As soon as he said that, I was like, something switched in my brain and I'm like, yeah. Why would you want? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it's the easy option for him, isn't it, to keep Illiman, run it down. And then, because obviously, well, in my opinion, it's certainly, we have a better chance of staying up with Illiman in team. But anyway. It's good, but it's not in his control. Right, I'm just going to start whizzing through a few of these guys. So sorry if I miss your comments, but we need to start wrapping up, I think. If this is an opinion, I'm happy to give it. Jez, what would you say, Nick, to Akpom or Makaduzi?
I'd go Akpom. I just would, because...
Would you go Akpom because you've never heard of Makaduzi?
Is that the Chelsea player?
No, I think it's a Georgian player.
From Metz, is that the Georgian player?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yes. Chukwuemeka you're thinking about.
Oh, that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Why can't you get these names clear in your head?
I know, exactly. I was talking to someone the other day, and I think it was a Leeds fan at work, and he was talking about them signing all these like English players and British players. And I'm like, they've gone from kind of signing all the foreign players to Brexit FC. And I'm like, we used to be Brexit FC. Now we've got to learn foreign names and stuff. It's crazy. But I would go Akpom only because last season at Bramall Lane, him and Archer absolutely tore us apart. And it looked the complete striker. I know it's only one season, but he looked the complete striker to me. Big, strong, quick. It reminded me of a better... I've forgotten his first name now. Davis, who played for Watford last season.
Keenan.
Keenan Davis. That's it. He reminds me of a better version of him and a better finisher than him.
Yeah, Andy the Blade's a big fan of Keenan Davis. He can do everything apart from score, really. Keenan Davis, which isn't ideal for a striker.
And Akpom got 28 of them. But however, some people thought that 28 goals came off his backside, to be fair, last season.
Ridiculous. I get the argument about a one-season wonder. I don't buy into it. I understand why people say it. But he, like you say, I thought he looked great when we saw him last season.
I actually think he needs another year in the Championship, because if he comes to Sheffield United and he doesn't get the service, he may lose that confidence and he may end up being a one-season wonder. However, I would 100% take the risk for 8 million. It's nothing really. Like, we were signing McBurney, and like, he scored the most goals in the Championship last season. The season that we went up, we went for more pay, who ended up going for 25 mil, I think, to Brighton. We got McBurney for 18-20 million. We're moaning about a striker that's costing us 8 million, and he scored 28 goals last season. And I said on Twitter, he scored more goals than Illiman and McBurney put together last season. So if there's anyone that I'd take a punt on, it would be that boy.
If it meant selling Jebo, would you sell Jebo to get Akpom?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Wow. Not a Sula.
Have a think about it. Have a think.
Not a Sula. No. I rate a Sula massively. He just needs to find the back of the net. I think it's his confidence that's struggling, but everything else has got to his game.
It's coming though, isn't it?
I've seen Jebo playing. Like one game, like at one point they were going Jebo starting up front one game, Asula the other, and watching them both and critiquing them both, you can see how much Asula is putting himself about, going up toe to toe with these big defenders and trying to knock them over, and he's a lot quicker. I just think that Jebo's got a little bit more league experience, and Asula can't help that.
Yeah, agreed, mate. Agreed. In He's at Roxy Bowling Centre. People are assuming it's Manchester last night with Sousa, so that's where the rumours have come from. Is somebody you like?
It
you
is a
might
good
know, Nick.
place, Roxy's.
Is there a Roxy Bowling Centre in Sheffield?
Yes.
I don't know. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Then there you go. So that don't clear it up, because for those that haven't seen the rumour, and that's all it is at this point. Apparently, it's between us and Burnley, who this Sousa player will be decided between. So now that we know he's at Roxy Bowling Centre, that's great. But there's one close to Burnley in Manchester, and there's one in Sheffield. So it doesn't really determine for us what's going off, does it?
I just want to make sure there actually is one. Now, I've said that. I said that way too quickly, like there was definitely
You were
one.
confident, weren't you? Excellent interview, says Stu.
Yeah.
Just another one for you there, mate.
Thank you.
Keep your cards close to your chest. I think that's in reference to Prince not revealing too much, particularly on budgets, and I agree. Palmer's just come off the bench for City. We've been linked with Cole Palmer again in mainstream news today. I'd love Cole Palmer. I think, and this is another example of the merry-go-round with fans being so up and down. And again, I'm in this mix. It's not me pointing the finger at anybody. We need to get Tommy Doyle. I were banging on about we need Tommy Doyle for a long time, but Cole Palmer's an upgrade on Tommy Doyle and probably where James McAtee is right now. I'm not saying McAtee won't surpass him, because he might, but Cole Palmer's been in and around the City first team for the last 18 months, 2 years. And I think if we can get him on loan, it's
good last season. He was good, but everybody, I think it's recency bias. Honestly. You can be honest.
Get rid of him now. Vote yes or no. Vote yes or no in the comments.
Do you honestly think that Doyle was head and shoulders above like everyone? Because I
think he was a massive upgrade for us in centre midfield compared to Norwood, who dropped off a cliff. Norwood dropped off a cliff, but this is where we start to see the bigger picture into it, because now we've been promoted. We could probably afford him. I know there's an issue with the wages, with the wage reduction, like there seems to be with every target we've got, but it's absolutely necessary we do that. But we could probably get Tommy, I think, if we really pushed hard enough. I think the club believes there's better players out there. So it fits into what you're saying, mate, really.
Yeah, I know you're not going to get to this one just yet, but someone's just popped in and said Doyle controlled the midfield. I think he controlled the midfield against weaker sides. But when we're playing Premier League football next season, like you said, I just think there's better players. I do think there's better players out there. And I think it goes against everything that we're doing right now. If we buy Tommy Doyle for 10, 12, 15 million, whatever. And he's going to be on massive wages as well, because we're obviously going for that younger model, which Tommy Doyle is, but he's English. And we know that there's an English tax on English players in this country. And I just feel like it's not the right way to go. Got a goal, has he? We're not getting him away.
That's him gone. Palmer with the beauty of a goal. Great finish. So Tommy Doyle, then, do we reckon we get him back?
I've always said he controls the midfield. He was our shining light last season.
What a player.
I
disagree slightly with, I think he's in our mould of players. I just think the calibre we're considering currently is higher. But it fits that mould of, if we are to get relegated and he does sign for us for 4 or 5 years, he's a very, very good championship player, in my opinion. But I get what you're saying. But you could also say the same about somebody like Lewis O'Brien, who I think will cost a lot less in wages and things of that nature. So, but he's like an above average player for us. He improves our starting 11, but he's not somebody that we want to be able to rely on for the next few seasons. So
I think he's a Sheffield United player. He really gets stuck in, and he, for me, is in the Fleck mould, a bit of a right-footed Fleck with more energy, a bit quicker, better on the ball. He's an upgrade on Fleck for me, even though Fleck was absolutely fantastic for us. He reminds me of him just getting stuck in and getting about the pitch. But it just made me laugh. Someone put the Tommy Doyle screamer against Blackburn. Tommy Doyle himself actually said he was knackered and he just swung his leg at it. So, yeah, you can read into that what you want.
I'd never have admitted that. I'd have said I
wouldn't have. I'd have been like, I've done it 15 times in training that week. Right.
I thought, yeah. Keeper out of position. I thought, it's now or never. Top corner, top bins. Steve, come on, Steve. We've got to be more positive than this. Tillman going to PSV. Maitland-Niles going to Lyon. Susan's going to Burnley. I don't want Susan to go to Burnley. I want her in centre of midfield. Akpom's wages are too high. We don't know that, mate. Palmer and McAtee both scoring for City lately. Yeah, I'll agree with that. We're signing nobody. Not true, mate. We will get somebody in. Keep the faith. After yesterday's performance, I'm so concerned about the left side, excluding Trusty, but left wing back and left midfield are a huge worry. So left midfield, we're all aware that we're trying to sign a central midfielder. The only concern I have, Paul, and I know Nick's in agreement with this because I heard his post. I watched your post-match, mate, other day. Larouci is not the one.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit harsh on Larouci, to be fair, but I've seen him a few times now, and it does not fill me with confidence. Yeah. I think I'd rather have Ben Osborne at left wing back. Better footballer. Well, we've only seen him like 3 or 4 times, haven't we? Let's be honest.
I know. To be honest, mate, I've been on the same boat, and I've been saying, am I being a bit harsh here? Because it's very early, and we'll give him every bit of time to get better, and hopefully he proves us wrong. Look, James McAtee was, a shell of himself in the beginning when he first signed for us. But he needs to step it up a little bit. When I'm putting Max Lowe in front of you, you're struggling, pal. If he signs for Burnley, we call him Susan now. Thanks, autocorrect. Absolutely, Steve. We'll do that. Susan, if he's a blade. Susan, if he goes to Burnley. He said money was there, but yet on Radio Sheffield, he said money was the issue. Manager's always going to ask for more money, I think. But Eki's known his budget since day dot. So, and absolutely, Eki's right to try and push for more. Us as fans want more money to be spent, but the owner's always going to push back and say, think about the longevity of the club. So, there you go. Hi, Jim and Nick. Regarding the game yesterday, I think the players were told to try different offensive play, but when losing the ball, don't press because of the shortage of players. Maybe. Palmer's just got man of the match for City.
Scott, we don't want to know this, mate. We don't want to know
what's going on. Paul, come on. We don't need to know it. Dave says, great interview. Really enjoyed it. My main target based on yesterday's match was to get a strong defensive midfielder in and work on us being hard to beat. Not sure playing with 2 up top will work. I'm not sure we'll go with a flat 2 up top, Dave, to be honest. I think we might see more of the 2 10s that we've seen. It'll all depend on personnel we manage to get in. There is one in Sheffield, says Mo. So you don't have to double check, mate.
I already double checked anyway. I just made sure.
Doyle control them. I'm just getting to your Doyle comments now. Darren Smith said we've prioritised Sousa over Doyle. I think that's a fair comment, Luke. I think we have. And if you look at, I've not done this much research. I haven't seen enough of Sousa. I've seen highlights and that's it. But from what a lot of people who know both players are saying, Sousa's an upgrade. Again, I can't confirm nor deny. In the last season, it was a huge reason why we got through and got promoted. Doyle, but yeah, you could make an argument for almost any player in 11, though. Really, I could argue that Jack Robinson played a huge part more in getting us promoted, and I still don't think he's a Premier League player. I'm playing devil's advocate because I'd be more than happy to see Tommy Doyle here, but it's one of them, isn't it? You've got to. It's a huge jump. Get who for the price it would cost? Who would you get for the price it would cost for Doyle?
I think you could probably get, in the model that we're doing right now, I think you could get possibly 2 or 3 for the amount of money that we'd be paying for Doyle. So I think that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're using our scouting network as much as we possibly can, and we're bringing in players that we hope are going to do the same job, because it's always going to be a risk, because we're not going to be able to sign a player from a Premier League team that's got Premier League experience, that's in his prime. We're going to have to, because Doyle could be a risk. Doyle could get found out in the Premier League. We could sign him for 15 million. He could be shocking. He could lose loads of confidence. And we'd be like, can't believe we've spent all this budget on Doyle. Do you know what I mean? And
old as a pup. Yeah.
If you buy 3 players, one of them may be absolutely incredible. And you don't need to worry about the other 2. If they come good, fantastic. That's what, looking at Benny Traore, for instance, I think he could be incredible if he, depending on what happens and how he gets nurtured. But we've got a lot of players that we don't know a lot about that we're going to see soon if they're good enough for the Premier League.
I think you can see in flashes that both Slimani and Traore, you can see exactly why we've bought them. And yeah, I think they're a good price. And they may well never reach those heights, but you can certainly see what's been seen in them, if you like, as purchasers. Scott says, I don't understand this playing two teams on the same day. First 11 have not played together. I completely agree with this, Scott. I completely agree. I think circumstance did play a part. I think Trusty's, Eki said in his interview that his clearance came through a bit late. So maybe that played a part in why Trusty weren't involved. Maybe Trusty were never going to be involved. Maybe Trusty doesn't start against Palace. Maybe it's Jack Robinson for where he played, towards back end of season. Who knows what Eki's thinking with that. But Max Lowe, he said, wouldn't play all game. I wonder if there's a niggling issue for Max Lowe. I don't know, mate. There's a few things that need to be considered, but I agree we should have had first 11 or strongest 11 out for at least a couple of games. Why do you think the club didn't want us to know who played in the second game yesterday or the result? I'm not too sure about why we've been so cagey, Dave, but I would say it's probably like if Brewster got some minutes, maybe we don't want to show our hand to Palace. If he's coming back, rumours are circulating online that we won 3-0 and he scored. But who knows? Who knows whether that's the case. Did we have any trialists involved and we don't want names circulated? There could be any reasons, mate, to be fair. Action location on my wavelength, get Michael Cooper in. That's the Plymouth keeper. He's Alan Cork still able to lace up his boots. Right. I think we'll leave it there, Nick, because I've kept you long enough, mate. Welcome to the Ramble, because this is how we roll in terms of no quick short 20-minuters here anymore. So, mate, thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted for you that it's been received so well so far. And we know that there'll be pockets of negativity, as there are with anything. But overall, I think you've put some sort of myths to bed, hopefully, with this. And there'll still be people that call it, but I don't think you could have done any more. I think you can be really proud of yourself and Hal as to how you conducted yourselves. I thought you did as proud as a fan base to sort of put the difficult questions to him. And thank you for that, mate. I've got some act to follow when he comes on the Ramble in January, and we'll see how that goes and see if I get any sticking lead up. But we shall see, mate. But yeah, anything you want to say, mate, before we close?
No, just thank you for having me on, and thank you for all the nice words. Thank you to the Blades fans for giving us all this praise. We don't necessarily crave the praise, but it's nice to get it when you feel like you've done a good job, and especially after all the crap that we had before, it's nice to know that some Blades care and like what we do, because at the end of the day, we've got some absolutely fantastic content creators, whether they're YouTubers or podcasters. We've got some fantastic stuff that I listen to and watch, everyone. And I hope everybody else does and everybody else enjoys what we do. But we do it for the love of the club. We don't do it for financial gain, because let's be honest, the payment is peanuts. We all have jobs as well that we are trying to kind of cram all this stuff into at the same time. Sometimes we don't want to do it, but we do it anyway because we want to give back to the fans. And it's certainly not for ourselves. It's definitely for the fans. So thanks for all the support today, guys, and I appreciate it for you asking me on, Jimmy.
No problem, mate. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated. Come on, you red and white wizards. Up the Blades.
Up the Blades.